Skill 22, Congruence in right triangles. For the first problem here, number 4, we are going to decide, are the two triangles congruent by the hypotenuse leg theorem? If they are, then we have to write a congruent statement, and if they are not, then we have to tell why they cannot be by this theorem. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to check the three conditions. So I need to have a right triangle, I need to have a leg that's the same, and I need to have the hypotenuse that's the same. So I'm going to check the conditions. First, I'm going to see if there's two right triangles. Well, I see a right angle right here and a right angle right here, and they form a triangle. So yes, I do have two right angles. Okay, now I need to check the congruent hypotenuse. Okay, so if I look the side opposite the right angle on each one is going to be this same side. So we would actually be using a reflexive property to say that they are the same, but yes, we do have two congruent hypotenuses because they're the same side. So we have the first two conditions. Now we look at the last condition. One pair of congruent legs. So that means the same leg on each one has to be congruent. So if I look, I don't actually have any markings. If I look at my two legs, I don't have any markings on this leg and no markings on this leg. Same thing over on the other triangle. So I just don't have enough information to tell me anything by the hypotenuse leg theorem. So we would say not enough information because we have no congruent legs. For problem number 6, we want to find the value of the variables, assuming that the triangles are congruent by the hypotenuse leg theorem. Okay, so this problem number 6, what we have are x's and y's, and we need to set up equations so that we can solve the problem. So the first thing we're going to look at is, since it's the hypotenuse leg theorem, we're going to assume that's true. We know that the hypotenuses have to be congruent to each other. So I'm going to say y plus 5 equals 3y plus x. I also know that my legs have to be congruent. So I have x plus 5 equals y minus x. Okay, so this is a system of equations that we have to solve. This is going back to algebra. When we are solving a system of equations, we can use substitution or elimination. I'm going to use substitution on this and solve the second equation for y. So if I add this x over to the other side, then what I would have would be y equals 2x plus 5. So now I have something set equal to y. So if I take that information and I plug it directly into all my y's for my first equation, then I can find my x value. So that is my next step. So I'm going to have 2x plus 5, and for that first y, plus 5 equals 3 times 2x plus 5 plus x. So that's what I'm going to solve. So I'm going to do just addition on this left side. So I have 2x plus 10 equals, distribution there, 6x plus 15 plus x. So I have 2x plus 10 equals 7x plus 15. Okay, so I subtract the 10 over and subtract the 7x over. So that's going to give me a negative 5x equals 5. So x equals a -1. Okay, so now once I find x, I can take that and put that in for my y. So that is my next step. So I'm going to have y equals 2 times -1 plus 5. 2 times -1 is a -2 plus 5, which is 3. So y equals 3. So our final answer is going to be x equals -1 and y equals 3 in this case. And we're done. Okay, for number 8, we have PS is congruent to PT, angle PRS is congruent to angle PRT, and we want to prove that triangle PRS is congruent to triangle PRT. Okay, so we need to think about, we need to check, maybe we're probably going to be able to use the hypotenuse leg theorem here. So I need to get a right triangle, have a hypotenuse the same, and have one set of legs the same. So let's mark what I know first. So the first thing in my given statement, what I know is that PS is the same as PT. And I also know that angle PRS is the same as PRT. Okay, so that's what I know so far. So that's my given statement. Now the next thing I'm going to look at is I can look at those angles right there, and if I can say they're right angles, that could help me with something. So if I look right here, I know that those are supplementary. Those two angles are supplementary because they form a linear pair. So taking that information, if we look back at our theorems, we have a theorem 5 that says congruent and supplementary. If two angles are congruent and supplementary, then each is a right angle. So right there, we can take that a step further and now say that these two are actually right angles and put the box in there. So we say that angle PRS and angle PRT are right angles by the angles congruent and supplementary theorem, theorem 5. Okay, now we have right angles, so we can say we have right triangles. So that would be my next step. So now we have right triangles, and if we look closer, what we would actually see is that we have the opposites, the sides that are opposite the right angles, are congruent. So we have the hypotenuse. So now we just have to get a leg to be the same. Well, if we look at the way these triangles are situated, they are joined right here by this line in the middle, and that would be a reflexive property. So that would be my next step. Say PR is congruent to PR by the reflexive property. Now I have a leg that's congruent. Since I have a leg, a hypotenuse, and a right triangle, I checked all my conditions, so the HL theorem holds, so I can say the two triangles are congruent. So that's my last step, is to say that this triangle PRS and this triangle PRT are congruent. So we say triangle PRS is congruent to triangle PRT by the hypotenuse leg theorem, and then we are done with our proof. So that's it for your notes over Skill 22, Congruence in Right Triangles. Summarize your notes, go through the rest of your practice problems, get those finished, and then you should be ready for your quiz.